Hello, welcome to the Asian Women of Power podcast. I'm your host, Kim Chi Chow. Today, we have another special episode for you. Last week, we have heard from the Asian Women's panel, and this week, we will have a discussion with the Asian Men's panel. In a few minutes, you will find out who these guests are. Again, the focus of this special episode is about the movie Crazy Rich Asian, which is ranking number 1 in America right now. We are going to talk about how this movie impacted us as Asian American and how different our view is compared to the Asian who still live in their own country. If you have not listened to the interview with the Asian Women's panel, I encourage you to do so. The discussion was insightful and deep, and we are going to do our best to bring out the unique perspective from the Asian men about this movie. To recap, the plot of the movie Crazy Rich Asian follow Rachel Chu, an Asian American woman who accompanies her boyfriend, Nick Young, to Singapore for his childhood best friend's wedding. This is the first time Rachel will meet Nick's family. Like most Asian American, she does not expect much. But what happened during this trip will open her eyes, test her heart, and challenge her identity. We are not going to review too much about the movie, but we are going to talk about a few scenes in this movie. Now let's welcome our men's panel. Please introduce yourself, your name, your ethnicity, generation, marital status, occupation, and your age. So let's start out with Kurt.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kirk Akahoshi. I'm a Japanese American. I am also a fourth generation Japanese American. So that means my great grandparents came over from Japan. I am married, and my occupation, I'm a licensed psychotherapist and executive coach. And I lead men's retreats and sacred circles. And I am 43 years old.
Thank you. Dan.
Hi there. You hear me okay, Kimchi? Great.
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Dan Horner, and I live in Tucson, Arizona. I'm an event producer in the kind of self-help, healing, alternative health and wellness, and spirituality space. And I've been doing that for about 8 years. I'm single. I'm 44 years old. And was there anything else? Happy to be here, and it's an honor to be here with you, Kimchi, and with all the other fine men on this panel, including Kirk, who is one of my heroes.
Thank you. Long?
Hi, everyone. My name is Long, and my ethnicity is Vietnamese. I'm second generation here. I am single. My occupation is a business development consultant, and my age, I'm 39 years old. And I'm happy to be here to be a part of this panel with everyone else.
Thank you. Baldwin?
Hey, how's it going? Hey, first I gotta say, it is awesome to see 3 good-looking men on this panel. So thank you guys for being here. My name is Baldwin Chiu. I am Chinese American. And I guess I have to put an asterisk by this because I would say I am 5th generation. Although I'm the producer of the film Finding Cleveland, which is about our discovery of the early Chinese in Mississippi. So recently we discovered my great grandfather buried in Mississippi. So the 5th generation thing is kind of it's kind of strange because it's actually the Chinese Exclusion Act prevented my family to be born here consecutively. So my daughter is the 6th generation of Americans in our family in America, but we were not consecutive because the Chinese Exclusion Act didn't allow us to be born here. So that's a whole nother story. So that means I am married because I just talked about my daughter. I am 44 years old. uh, and yeah, I'm a film producer, I'm a hip hop artist, beatboxer, and I do engineering on the side.
Wow, thank you. All right. So the first question for today is, how many times did you see the movie? Dan?
Oh, I was just unmuting. I thought we were all unmuting, but I've only seen it the one time, and I will definitely be going to see it again, a second and probably a third time, just depending on which of my white friends wants to go with me.
Oh, you will be like a translator?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
The good thing is you don't need a translator because it is in English.
Right.
I only saw it once as well, but I've been wanting to see it a second time. I just haven't had a chance to do it, but I definitely will be seeing it again.
I actually got the opportunity to see it twice. One time with my friends in Las Vegas and one time with my friends in San Diego, where I am a current resident.
I've also only seen it once, but I'm also looking forward to seeing a second time, especially after this interview and as I've been reading more and more articles. So I'm, have a much finer eye, I think, the second viewing. So I think that's going to be very interesting for me.
Mm-hmm. So the question, so out of from this panel, only Long saw it twice. Is the movie getting better, or do you feel less emotional the second time?
I actually saw it on a different perspective the second time, and I still did feel the emotional connection to it. And I looked at it on a deeper perspective from that. So watching it the second time, there was a lot of comedy. It was the things that I completely missed, and just seeing that on a deeper level was very interesting on seeing that.
Okay. What's your most memorable scene? The scene that make you feel sad, or make you feel happy, or make you feel angry, or make you laugh out loud?
For me, the scene that stood out the most for me was where it was when Nick was willing to give up everything just for Rachel. And for me, that was very important scene for me because coming from, being an Asian, I fight a lot with my parents because they want a certain structure. They want certain things for me. And just having that dichotomy going through living in America and seeing that, it's kind of just like, for me, I've done a lot of things that I fought against my parents, and it was just me and my parents just kept on clashing all the time, where I got to the point where my father actually disowned me, and now our relationship is awesome. But there's so many times that I've clashed because of just the cultural differences and what they want, and for me just to be able to accept it and sometimes just hold my breath and just to make them happy. So seeing that was just liberating.
Which scene is that? I don't remember.
That was when with Nick was it was near towards the end where Rachel came up to the mom and said, hey, he asked me to marry me, and he's willing to give up everything just to live, just to come back and live with me. And she said, I told him no. That was towards the end when she talked to the mother during when they were playing mahjong. So it was the proposal and everything during that time.
Okay.
For me, Kimchi, there was two scenes that I thought were really memorable for me. One, I'm not exactly sure why, and then the other one, I definitely know why. But the first one is the very first scene of the movie where they come into the hotel and they're not welcome there. And, I've only had a minor league experience, nothing quite that bad in my time here, since the 1970s. But it certainly has happened. And the thing is, they nailed so many subtleties of this movie throughout the entire movie that I hope we talk about more throughout the entire interview. But the one that they nailed for me, like they grabbed me right away, was then she bought the hotel and fired the staff. And that, for me, I can't tell you. I mean, I thought, oh, at first I thought, what a typical scene. It's very a normal Hollywood scene where someone's getting put down on. But when she bought the hotel and fired the staff, it nailed me so badly, because I can tell you, I have had those exact same thoughts. I don't know how many times in my life. Like, I'm gonna buy this place and fire all you a-holes. So for me, it just grabbed me really strongly and was like, you got me there. You got me there. The second one was when they were making the food together as a family. Again, that's the one where I'm not really sure why that grabbed me, but I got very emotional during that scene. And I think it had something to do with the fact that I never thought I'd see, and it's not even I'm Korean American, and it's like, it's not even that it was Korean food, but it reminded me enough of Korean food, it's Asian cultural food, that I never thought I would see that happening in a film. It's not that I even thought about it. It's like that I never even thought that might ever happen. It never even occurred to me that it might happen. And so then when I saw it, it was like the conspicuous absence of something that I'd never really observed before. So I thought it was really moving for me.
Or you talking about making a dumpling together?
Yeah, making the dumplings, right.
Okay.
Yeah, as a family especially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she talked about the cultural significance of that, and that if we don't keep those cultural practices alive, that they might go away.
For me, I think the most memorable scene for me would be when Rachel found out the truth about her father, when the mom revealed it. And it was one of those things where it's like, I wasn't really expecting that, because I think it was laid out really well to where you didn't expect that to be the answer, at least for me. I mean, maybe some of you guys could foresee it, but I wasn't expecting it. But then I thought, oh, that's so typical of a mother's love. I could experience that too, because not that my parents were separated, but the fact that my mom would like hide things from me so that I wouldn't get hurt, or to try to protect me, or to just shelter us in a way where it's like, I think most Americans that are non-Asian would be like, their parents would be a little more like, just say it, like they'll just tell you bluntly in your face if you're doing something wrong, or something something is wrong. They don't really mind letting you know, but I think maybe it's the whole saving face or not losing face thing. But I thought that was it really impacted me, because I was like, wow, there was a dark secret in the family, and I think Asians really try to hide that darkness in the past. At least my family did. Yeah, that part really got me.
I would say, well, since Dan said 2, so I get 2. Thanks, Dan. Well, the 2 that I want to talk about that I guess are different from your guys' scene, just to give it a little fuller picture. I really like the dinner scene at Awkwafina's house. Forgot her character's name, with Ken Jeong, and one of the kids didn't want to eat the chicken, and he said, "Oh, there's starving kids in America," and so that just really just made me laugh really really good, because it's just so much, I think, of the American cultural perspective on foreign countries is so much that way, that they're anybody outside of America is poor or suffering, or second class, and just to have that turn around, it was like, thank you, let's show the perspective of how Americans must look like, in a very comedic way. And then I would say the other favorite scene was the Mahjong scene, and for me, because it's one of those things where I didn't really, I knew that it was a powerful scene, and I didn't know much about mahjong, so that just intrigued me to go and look at the research, or I mean what people were talking about, and just the different layers about that scene. And I think that makes for good storytelling, that it's just not so much in your face, but you have to know so many different cultural contexts, like why was the bamboo the ones you know, kind of tossed aside, and how that's related to you know, being a banana, and how, you know, Rachel could have won, but you know, it's all about strategy, and you know, letting her you know, Nick's mom win. So it was just a very complex scene, very subtle, and just made you want to learn more about the culture and the game. So I think that's why it was one of my favorites as well.
Okay, Long,
Yes,
did you share?
I did.
Okay, all righty. So what was your favorite scene and why?
I think Kirk just took mine when he was talking about the mahjong scene. For all the reasons he said, you know, like so I don't need to repeat it, but I thought it was really well crafted. I thought it was shot really well. I thought I'm not really big. I don't play mahjong a lot, but I played it a little bit, and I learned a little bit of it, and I've seen the old ladies, you know, play it in the halls and stuff like that, and my in-laws play it. But yeah, I love that part. I love the fact that it went full circle the way the story was told, because it's the film started with her in the classroom talking about game strategy, and they didn't lose it. It came full circle, and it came back to, that's how they ended the movie, with her, you know, doing something that she's great at, which was game strategy, but then it related to life strategy and heart strategy. And it was powerful. I think I know people that didn't even understand mahjong, never seen the game before. The way he shot it, and the way the acting was done, was people knew that she could have won. So it was one of those things where you didn't even have to understand the game, but once you understand the game, it's like, oh, that's pretty, like, that's even more exciting, like, when you understand it.
Yeah, I would have to agree with both Kirk and Baldwin on this, on the mahjong. That's probably my favorite scene. The strategy, it was just understanding how it comes back down, and Rachel was able to not only win it through strategy, but at the same time throw it right back in her face and saying, "Hey, this is how life is, and whether you decide which direction you go, it's not a win-win situation for you, and you got to decide which direction you want to go." And then she just walked away just being proud of, you know, what she did, and stood for herself, and just being proud with walking away with her mom. So that was one of my favorite scenes. That was probably my favorite scene ultimately.
I just wanted to say something. I really agree with what Baldwin said about the scene with the secrets of the family. Like, until you said that, I didn't really quite get that. I was like, oh, that's a thing for me too. That's another thing that hit home for me. But what I really loved about that scene was she was probably a lower class citizen before she left China, and then she came, and her daughter, really made it big. She's a professor at NYU, and now she's marrying, this guy Nick Young in the movie. So it just shows, like, the film was a great marriage of second generation Asians and, Asian culture, or Singaporean culture specifically. So it was like this great, like, they really did a great literal and figurative marriage between second generations and Asian culture. But what I really loved was that the mother had come over, and she had these dark secrets or whatever, and she wasn't of the highest class of society, but her daughter had really, made it big in the United States, and then could come back, and her own daughter could be marrying, the most eligible bachelor in Singapore. And so I love that. I mean, it really kind of put the American flavor on it, the second generation flavor, and I really appreciated that aspect of the film throughout.
So I think I mentioned, I guess, my favorite scenes, but I would say that what struck me the most, just right off the bat, was just, it was just really just validating to just see one good-looking Asians, and both, like, I think especially Asian American or just Asian men, because I think there's not many scenes in other movies where we're that good looking, and second of all, that we had American and British accents, and that, you know, is a long time coming. That you know, me being fourth generation Japanese American, that it was like, thank you, because so many times it's always portrayed that we're, you know, we're foreign, we're not from America, we're not from other places, we're always from, you know, the Orient, so we're always gonna have that. And so just throughout, it was just like, thank you, just thank you, thank you. That just that that was the most impressionable part for me.
Yeah, I thought that was funny because the way when you mentioned that the Ken Jeong scene where he allowed Americans to watch the scene where if you didn't know who Ken Jeong was, you probably thought he really did have an accent, and then he was like, "Nah, I'm just playing. I'm an American. I don't have no accent." And I feel like, you know, I thought it was funny just because I'm thinking in the context of an American that does not know who Ken Jeong is, and they probably expected him to speak that way, and for him to throw it back in their face like, no man, see, that's your stereotype, that's wrong.
So for me, my favorite scene is also during the mahjong playing, but not about mahjong, but about Rachel's comment. She told the mom, Grace, right, that if Nick follow her without the parents' approval, Nick won't be happy. But if Nick obey the parents and leave her, then Nick will resent the family forever. So that's really impactful for me because I see that happening all the time. That's, you know, from the Asian family. They force the children to leave the guy or leave the girl because of the family status. So, yeah.
Or even the job, you know, like the career choice, the same thing.
So, what did you learn about yourself after watching this movie? Are you proud to be an Asian American?
So for me, it did bring a lot of pride just to see the film, and it made me prouder to be an Asian American. But what I really learned was just something that Kirk and I had talked about before, but it really, you know, never having seen a film like this in American cinema, it just really there was like a conspicuous absence of something. And you know, it's like I don't know that I could have put my finger on it before the film, but this film really kind of broke ground, and it made me realize how little I've seen someone that looks like me in major media, whether it be television or film. And again, Ken Jeong, you know, his first major roles, he's the jester, he's the comedian, and that's you know, that's been a lot of the Asian roles have been like this guy who's you know, like Revenge of the Nerds, where, you know, it's just this clueless guy who doesn't know what's going on, and or Ken Jeong, he plays this kind of really whacked out gangster kind of guy, but he's not the lead character. And so I really think this film broke ground, and it really just made me realize the let's say subconscious effect of never having seen that, and it really kind of made me proud on that front that, you know, we've kind of broken this, you know, invisible glass ceiling that I didn't even know was there. You know, I didn't even know was there, kind of, in a sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with you, and from our conversation, I probably just echo that what you're saying, Dan. Just feeling that, you know, it's all about, like, for myself, like, okay, well, you know, what is like our Asian American identity? Because there's not many role models that we see. And it was like, oh, okay, so I could be Bruce Lee, or I could be Long Duck Dong. Well, okay, well, those are like two extremes, but there's nothing in the middle. And so I think just for the younger generations, just to see, okay, well, there's all these different types of male and female characters. It's not so typecast. And so that was really refreshing. And I think for me, the effects that it's number one, that's like very important, because often when I was talking to, like, you know, anytime I'd meet somebody who had ties with Hollywood, I'd ask, like, you know, hey, how come there's no Asian leading, you know, men or women? Like, how come? And I just over and over, I kept on hearing, well, because they're not bankable. Like, nobody would go see that. And I would just call, you know, I was like, BS. Like, you know, I don't, you know, I didn't feel that way. But I'm not in Hollywood. I don't have any control. It's just my, you know, my opinion. And so having this movie do so well, like for so many weeks and breaking records, it's like, finally, see? So, you know, get out of your, you know, prejudice. And like, we are bankable. And I wish, you know, Hollywood wasn't so much more money oriented, but, you know, it's okay, so be it. So at least it shows, okay, that people are going to go see stories and actors, you know, who are of Asian descent.
And can I just say, I just want to say one more thing on the tail end of that is something that hits very close to home for me. So when I was a kid in the 1970s, my dad, who was white, and, you know, said to my mother, and I didn't know this, I found out about it as an adult, but my dad said to my mother, my God, this kid, he's a showman, like he's an actor, he's a performer. And I was always putting on these shows as a little kid and entertaining my family. And my dad said, we should get him into acting classes. And my mother, who was experiencing the racism that was happening in the 70s, my mother, you know, fresh off the boat, first generation, who was experiencing, you know, some pretty strong racism at the time, she said, we don't want to let him become an actor because they're never going to let him be the lead role. He's always going to be this side character if he gets anything at all. So I didn't know that till I was an adult. My dad told me that story when I was an adult, that, you know, even this possibility was squashed before it could even, you know, be given any room to breathe. And later as an adult, I did do some like community theater. You know, I'm on stage a lot as an event producer. I MC all my events, and I am kind of this performer. But you know, one of the things that really moved me was to see those folks that now they're going to have future roles. They can be big stars, and so it did touch me to see that. I was super proud that you know, that is at least being broken to some extent. You know, for me, it really hit home.
For myself, what I really learned is that it's okay for me to have arguments with my parents and felt I'm in a guilt trip because my mom's putting me in a guilt trip to do what my mom truly wants me to do. But reality is I got to do what's best for me. And just watching that and knowing that I'm not the only one that's going through the same challenges, it was actually refreshing. It was just an eye opener because I was just fighting myself going, oh man, I should listen to my mom because my mom's using this guilt trip of I don't love her if I don't do this. And so now it's kind of just kind of like a comfort where it's like, it's okay. I got to do what's best for me, and I got to be able to live my life and not live what my parents expect me to be. So.
I guess for me, I am more proud to be an American and to be Asian American. But I think what the film did was make me learn more about myself, is that even though I already knew that I always had this passion to do something different in the entertainment industry, to break some sort of grounds or to encourage grounds to be broken for people that look like us, I felt like what this film really helped me do was learn more that I can now it's given me to understand that I can now take it to the next level. I've had these conversations with people in the past in entertainment who said, It was a Kirk that said, like, yeah, there's the bottom line says we don't want Asians, right? I've talked to those people before. I feel like what I've learned is like now I have another opportunity to go back to these same people and be like, okay, let's continue our conversation. I'm not going to beat you on the head about, I won't say see, but let's talk about this again. Let's see if your perspective has changed. I feel like I'm a lot more, I want more of this, and I want to be a part of something where I can bring more people in, whether it be myself or somebody else. It doesn't matter as long as we're fairly represented. But one of the things I really learned is, um, I've been speaking to a lot of executives over the summer, and one of the things that's been really common is about the authenticity of films, and the viewers know when they're getting scammed, and that's why films don't do well. And I think a lot of times when we would see films that are not authentic about who we are, then of course our community is going to slam it, and we're not going to enjoy it, and we're going to have this negative impact. And that negative impact actually negative impacts us for longer than just one generation. It might prevent us from trying to make a difference. But um, but now we see something that is authentic, and the art, the secret to great filmmaking is authenticity. So if you, because you don't want to, your viewers are smarter than that, right? So now we've shown them something authentic. We've shown them that we can be on screen, and we can teach the world about who we are, not like those two extremes like Kurt was talking about, but we can be in the middle, and we can fit into your narrative some way, somehow, whether it's yours. All of us can fit into that narrative, and all of us can be normalized in everyday conversation. Yeah, so I think that's what I really took out of it.
So, from watching this movie, has it remind you of some past wounds from the family members?
Yeah, definitely it does. Um, because I mean, I'm in the entertainment industry, and my dad was like, "No, you should never do stuff like that," right? And so I think all of us are like, we're Americans. We believe in the American dream, that we can do anything. But then our parents are like, "No, you can't do everything. You can only do doctor, lawyer, engineer, businessman," right? Um, so to see, like, I think it opened up some wounds. But the good thing is, I actually was able to talk to my parents, and I was like, hey, I saw the movie, and you guys should really see it. Just go on a date, like, just watch the movie. I think you'll like it. And I didn't think they would, because I felt like if my dad saw the film, it would be like, oh, he's just encouraging me to encourage him to do something. And but then he went and watched it, and then he and my mom said, "Oh, they actually liked it." And there were points in the film where I was really hoping they would watch it and see how me and my father didn't get along, because I was never good enough, because I'm American. I think that was a big line in the movie about, like, you will never be enough. And she was like, "Why? Because I'm not rich?" "No, because you're American. That's why you're not good enough." And I felt like that's how I was growing up. I was like, I wasn't Asian, but I wasn't American. But to me, I'm American. To my dad, I wasn't. And so I think those wounds really opened up, and I'm hoping that he now sees what the importance was for a film like this to actually finally come back out.
Yeah, you mentioned that phrase. It's really touched my heart too. Um, when Grace talked to Rachel, Grace said, "You will never be enough," right? For most of us as Asian women, we feel that we are not good enough. And in general, women always feel that we are not good enough. So how does it work for men? Does men ever feel that you are good enough, or you will never be enough?
That Baldwin brought that up, because one of the things that I never thought about what he shared, but until just like right now when we're talking about it, and I'm going, it really touched, because my story is I always felt I was never good enough for my dad's connection. And that was a big dichotomy with me and my dad. And that's the reason why there's times where, my dad came from a military background, very structured. And myself over here in America, I'm very free. I want to do things on my own. And we have so different mindsets. My dad wanted me to get a job where I just wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so we kept on clashing heads and butting. And, I've always felt I was never good enough for his connection. I didn't realize that until maybe about 11 years ago when I lost over $400,000. And that was what I actually took a look back in my life and figured out my patterns and realized that everything that I did was because I was trying to prove to my dad that I was good enough for his connection. When I realized that, I took a stand for connection. That's what I stand for now. And my relationship to this day is very awesome because my dad actually hugs me. He tells me he loves me out of nowhere. And it would have never been that way if I never realized that. So yes, absolutely. I always felt I was never good enough for my dad's connection. And that was one of the things that touched, I never made that connection until Baldwin brought it up right now. And I just went, holy cow, wow. So yes, that's what I got out of my experience on that.
So I think I'm really fortunate to have really wonderful and loving parents. So Mom and Dad, if you're watching, hi, I love you. And I still have deep wounds of not good enough. And not from my parents, but I think culturally, just this intergenerational trauma. And so since my whole family was during World War II, they were all put in the internment camps. There's just this like deep wounding. So even though that my whole family was born and raised in America and were American citizens, that because of the war, that we're all put in internment camps. So then just coming out of that, that starts to affect me as well. So like I think just that's impacted me about, I don't feel good enough. And I think before I got married, a lot of, I would date interracially, and that would come up. I know that sometimes I would be dating somebody, and then all of a sudden, they would say, "Oh, you're the first Asian that I've ever dated," and so it's always like, well, I'm not good enough, or I would talk to some of my friends like, oh, I like her. And they're like, really? Why? You think you have a chance? And it's like, so again, there's that reminder. So I'm not good enough because I'm Asian, if I wasn't, well, then I probably would be good enough because I have everything else. I have the good grades. I have good friends. I, got all these other things, but just because of my culture, I'm not good enough. And so I think that's kind of propelled me too. I think also just professionally. And so I just see myself, it's like, okay, I just can't be, a therapist. I have to be a really good therapist. So I went and got trained in 4 different modalities because it's like, I don't feel good enough. So it's like, okay, so I got to keep earning these credentials. And it's been my own personal work to start to let that go, just to be, no, Kirk, I am good enough. I don't need these other things to make me feel that way. So I think on a more cultural level, that's where I feel the wounding of not good enough.
And yeah, Kimchi, I definitely do. This is Dan. I definitely feel like culturally I've gotten wounded in not being good enough. I grew up, I think most of you guys grew up on the West Coast, which I'm sure it wasn't the most fantastic treatment of Asians, but I grew up in a very suburban white town in the East Coast. And, like I mentioned at one point that the KKK used to recruit there every couple of years. Like there would be guys going around trying to recruit new folks. So I certainly got a lot of, racism in school, and I was definitely treated like a second-class citizen. Like Kirk was saying, like I could be the best at sports. I mean, I could be the best at academics. I was the funny guy in class. Like I had all sorts of things going for me, but I always felt like I was treated like a second-class citizen, where I was not going to be voted into being the team captain. I was not going to be the president of the student body or that sort of thing. It just wasn't even an option because no one was going to see me in that position or vote for me in that way. So I definitely had that. It's something that I have worked on internally for several years, and I feel like I'm finally landing into the place where I am. I don't even think about whether I'm good enough or not anymore. I just go with what I got to do. I'm sure there's still some there that I'm working on, but it's about 10% of what it used to be. I have to say for sure. Thanks.
Hey, I think that's a great point you bring up, Dan. Because I think yeah, the wounds from the friends probably hurt more than the wounds from the family. Although the family ones hurt pretty bad, but I think the friends ones hurt more just because they're the ones you grew up with and they're your peers, and you just figure family's family, whatever. You're gonna move out anyways, right? But I do remember uh, I remember so many of the comments like, "It's getting a little nippy here, don't you, chink?" Right? And I was like, "Whoa!" Like, and I was the captain of the football team. I was actually the quarterback, and they would still make comments like that. And then I remember one of the top linebackers on our team would come up to me, was like, "Chu, never thought you would end up being our quarterback." I'm just like, where'd that coming from, right? But no one blinked when I was like the president of the honor society. They were like, "Oh, we expect you to be the president of the honor society, but we don't expect you to be on the basketball team, and definitely not on the football team, and definitely not our quarterback." And it was always hurtful to hear racist comments. I know, like, so I was born in San Francisco, so I didn't get as much racism there. But then when I moved to Sacramento, I actually moved to the suburbs of Sacramento, like you mentioned, Dan. And there was like, I went from highly Asian population to hardly any Asian population. And I remember in third grade, I got like beat up in recess by 10 kids because as soon as I walked into class, they're like, "You're like Bruce Lee, you know karate, and we're gonna test you during recess." And they did. So yeah, that was kind of traumatic. They wouldn't mess with me now, but that was traumatic in third grade.
In a way, that's a blessing, right? It reminds you to take some karate lessons, right?
I had to just to protect myself.
And I'm the same way. When I was in elementary school, I went to an all-white and Hispanic school down right next to the border, and there wasn't any Asians because my parents wanted to keep me away from the Vietnamese, so they moved into an area where there's no Vietnamese because of the gangsters and everything like that. They want me to grow up as a good child. And I went to all white and performing arts school, and I was the only Asian. So I was being picked on left and right, where I got into fights there, where I came home beat up and went to the principal. My parents said, "Hey, you're going into Taekwondo." Got my black belt when I was 10 and a half, stood up to my bully, and then that was the last time they picked on me. But that's how I grew up, was just, even though I wasn't in white suburbs, I went to an all Hispanic and white school, and it was just, I was still being picked on also because I was the only one that's the minority. So.
Wow. So let's see, only Kurt and Baldwin are married, right? The Dan and Long are still single.
Wait, are you saying that's good or bad for us? I'm not sure.
No. It's because of my next questions, okay? So my question is, when you see the interaction between these married couple from the movie, like Eleanor and Philip, which we did not see, and Philip is Nick's father, Eleanor is Nick's mom, Astrid and Michael, the cousin, very wealthy cousin, and Eddie and Fiona. What does it remind you of? That kind of interaction in their marriage, the way that they show in the movie that that Philip, which is Nick's father, was traveling offshore somewhere to do business and let the mom stay home, right? Take care of everything. And then Astrid is very wealthy, and she loved jewelry, right? she buy it and then she hide it from her husband. And then Eddie and Fiona, right? Eddie is like show off. He likes stuff. And Fiona, didn't care much. So what does it remind you of?
I'll go. I think it just reminds me that how different everyone is. Like we can look the same, we can come from similar backgrounds, but the outcome is always different because we are all individuals. And I think that's Hollywood tends to forget that about Asians. They think we're all the same. And I think that was the great part of this film, was showing couples that may appear the same on the outside, but just like in America, just like in the rest of the world, it doesn't matter if we look the same. Inside, we're all different. We all have different perspectives. We all have different things that influence us differently and affect our decision making. And so then you can have three totally different types of marriages, even though it might seem like they should all be pretty much the same. And I think that's what I thought of that, and I think that's why I thought it was good, because I think Hollywood needs to see that just about our community, is that we may all look the same. We may even have similar backgrounds of going to college or whatever, academia, but we are all so different. And I think that's the important thing to remember in relationships and in the way we're portrayed in Hollywood.
Do you mind if I riff on that really quick, Kimchi? Yeah, so I really appreciate that, Baldwin. Yeah, I think that is really what the film did, is, it broke all these cultural stereotypes. And I don't know how many times, people have been like, oh, you want to be Chinese or Japanese? And, I'm neither one, right? It's like, it's the difference between French and English, like, or English and German, or French and German. I mean, it's a completely different culture. But in this film, they had Astrid, who, Asian women are always, are very typically characterized in films as these kind of, quiet and put their head down and yes, obedient kind of types, passive types. And you had Astrid in there, who was like this kind of mogul, with, her fashion line, and she was beautiful and she was kicking ass and she was powerful. So like that was one stereotype that I saw broke. And just to have, as Kirk was talking about, just to have Asian leading men and all those handsome guys on there who were well-spoken and smart and doing great things in the world. And then to have these different characters, some were funny and some were, living like the party life, and some were really serious about work and business. And just to see all those different characters to just kind of break that cultural norm of like, aren't you all the same? Aren't you all the same? Like it really warmed my heart to see that. So thanks a lot for bringing that up.
Kurt, do you have any comment on that?
I totally agree with Dan. Yeah, same with Baldwin. Yeah, it was refreshing just to see different relationship dynamics, and that these are just real dynamics that easily show up with jealousy, with working too much, with secrecy, with not communicating, and that these are just very real relationships, and doesn't matter what class or where we come from, that we're all going to have these different relationships challenges.
I don't know. For me, it was just looking at it. I love the fact of how it breaks all the stereotypes, the cultural stereotypes, and it makes me think about how humanity, all of us, it doesn't matter what race you are, whether it's Asian, whether it's Black, whether it's Hispanics, we're all humans, and it's all about humanity. And we all have our different flaws, and we all have our strengths, and we can't put each other in a box where to be able to elevate each other. It's all about how we actually speak to each other, and how we elevate each other to elevate humanity in general, and love each other to grow, rather than picking on each other and bringing hate and putting ourselves in a box where you're a certain culture, you're a certain race, you're a certain gender, this is how you should be. And it's about how we treat each other and raise humanity and take humanity to a different level.
So do you believe that wealth could undermine or damage the relationship between the couple? Because one of them would feel that they are not good enough or they are not worthy.
So for me, I don't believe that wealth will undermine it. Let's put it this way. The way I see things is that you have challenges and issues that you have within yourself, and if you don't work through those, money is not going to do anything different. Money will treat a bad person with bad intentions the same way as it would treat a good person with good intentions. Money doesn't discriminate. And the one thing is, it's all about your character and it's about who you are. And I think it's about working through the challenges that you have within you. And if you don't go through those challenges and work through those challenges, you're always going to carry that with you.
I
So,
think,
go ahead.
I think it can, but I think it's because what wealth, or at least a difference in wealth in a relationship, I think what it does is it heightens the problems that are already existing there. Somehow our culture or society or the way people treat money and wealth, um, it does something to us psychologically, I believe, that heightens something that's already there. So let's say you're all kind of like the same level and you have problems. You feel like you can work it out a little bit more because you feel like you're more on an equal playing field. But let's say you have problems already, and then you have one that's uber wealthy and one that's not. Then now you're talking about, okay, that disparity is now getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I feel like that unless you have like strong communication, unless you have strong ways of of, uh, of of understanding where people's insecurities might be, then you're gonna have a problem. So you got to work. I think you just have to work a lot harder about those types of relationships and just recognize that those disparities get heightened.
I think, well, in therapy, when you're doing couples therapy, like the three biggest crises are, the conflicts are money, sex, and children. So, of course, no matter, so I don't necessarily think necessarily wealth, but money just in general, is just with any couple, you're just such a money creates such a value system, and it's important for couples to really talk about what their values around money, about spending and saving. Otherwise, no matter how much money you have, it's you're going to have conflicts.
Hey, I love that answer, Kurt. That's a great. I love it.
Yeah, I think most for Asian for Asian women, we tend to marry up. You know what I mean, right? We marry the man who has more than us. Either they are richer than us or smarter than us or whatever. It's better, so we marry up. But for men, they marry down because they don't want the wife to exceed them, right? In terms of wealth or in terms of the, the the smart, the brain and things like that. Because I see most of the time when a woman is richer or smarter than the man, it's kind of damaged the man's ego, and that could add to the relationship. What do you think about that?
As one of the single guys on here, Kimchi, I can tell you for sure that if you send me a more powerful, richer, and smarter woman, I will be totally okay with it. I can tell you if any of those women are having any problems, please send them my way. I'd be happy to go out on a date with them.
I'm gonna keep my eyes out open for you. All right, Dan.
I would second Dan's what Dan would share also. I would have no challenges.
On a more serious note, I think what Kurt said is kind of jives with what everyone is saying here, is that it's your value system. So if money is your determination of value, then yes. But there's something that Phil Cook says this. He's a writer and a film producer, and he works a lot in the entertainment industry. He's an author. He said one of the things he says in his book is that your value is determined by your ability to solve somebody's problem. So rather than having our value in how much money we make or how good of how sexual you are or what was the third family and if you have kids, right, or how many kids you want, like those are the three things I think Kurt was saying is the most important things in a family makeup. If those are your value systems, then maybe you might have a problem. But if your value system within your family and within your marriage is how can I make you better? How can I become better because of you? And how can we grow our family so that my child is better and we're solving people's problems? I'm solving your problem, you're solving mine, I'm solving my child's. We go out and we collectively try to solve the problems of other people, realizing that we're not the center of attention. Then maybe that's the only way you can overcome like large disparities of wealth, or the other two topics that Kirk was talking about as well.
I also think it's interesting culturally too. As women's salaries start to increase, it's making a huge cultural shift, and I think for the good. And so now, like Kim Chi, what you were saying before, how I think before, well, yeah, that women were probably marrying up because men, for decades or centuries were the bread earners. And now that there's a lot of women who now are the bread earners. So then our cultural values are shifting. And I'm hearing a lot of my female friends, that are dating men that don't make as much, and that, they're wondering like, well, that doesn't feel good for them. And there's, I'm sure, all different expressions. Or I've heard what's happening culturally in Japan, how women are making more money, and a lot of the and so they have a lot of independence, and so they're like, well, why do we need men? We don't need them anymore. And so there's not a lot of relationships, and so their population is dropping. So I definitely believe that there should be equality in the as far as economically in income between men and women. And I think this is good because it's really having us have a conversation about our values and about our roles, because now something new has to emerge.
Yeah, that's I think that's one of the reasons that more women they choose to stay single, right? When they are pretty well off, they have good job, or they are inherited well from the family. They choose to stay single, not married, because of the perception that why would they need to like cook and clean and serve the men, right? So yeah, that's happening a lot, like in Asia, in Japan, in Taiwan, and even in America too. And you see more and more women, they are single.
And with that's happening, I think along has to play with that is just the internet and all these social media sites, and so connection's really broken. And what I'm seeing is that people aren't connecting anymore. I'm not just talking about females and males and relationships where there's a gap with wealth or anything. It's just connection in general. So many people are taking social media for granted, where a short, simple text is good enough, which reality is it should be more about connecting in person and really having that emotional connection with people and just being connected, because that's what humanity is all about. That's, if you're on an isolated island, you're going to be bored, and that's not being human. So I think it's just overall the connection of people is just getting so spread out and getting so diminished that people aren't connecting anymore. And this is the reason why, females are deciding to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be single, and so is males. It's because we're not going out there and really connecting with people, because money comes in different currencies. Currencies comes in different forms. It could be energy. It could be, the love, the emotions, just the friendship. It could be, there's so many different ways, and it's just not about the money and the finances, but we're not connecting anymore. I think that's the biggest challenge is being able to connect with people and going deeper than just being in the shallow and talking about shallow stuff and about how's the weather and things like that. It's about going deep.
For me and my wife, we've been married over 10 years, coming up on 11, and for all of our relationships, she was full-time entertainment industry, and I was working entertainment, but I was the one that said like, oh, but I got to pay the bills. So I worked, and I was pretty successful, doing engineering. So I was like the breadwinner, but I've always in the back of my mind, I was like, this should shift, because really my wife is like brilliant. She's this amazing artistic person that if she wasn't Asian, then she probably would have done something huge. But I was just like, we're waiting for the shift, And I think, and now, like, after I left my job so that we can work full-time in entertainment, my wife is actually the one that's getting more gigs now. It's not like the same disparate, separation as when I was an engineer and she was working in entertainment, but she's directing our film. She's got more meetings. She's working a lot more than I am, and I'm just like, yeah, I'll sit back and I'll let you do that. And I spent all day today doing the dishes and cleaning and everything. I had a great time doing that, and she actually just got in. I was a little late today just because she got home just in time from the editor to be able to like take my daughter upstairs. And so and I'm feeling like, wow, this is awesome that we get to flip this a little bit, and maybe we could flip it even more so she can like get this, get that next audition or something and really get it, or maybe we come up together. But I think the reason why we've never cared about the disparity, the change, the differences, is because our goal is greater than the money that we're making. Of course, we need money to survive, but our goal is greater than that. I feel like our goal is like, we are in the entertainment community because we've always, since before we met, wanted to create some sort of change. We wanted to see us represented in a positive way, in a fair way, and in a way that normalizes our conversation. And now our goal is really to educate people in schools and museums and stuff like that. So I feel like the attention is off of us. Like, sure, we may be, occasionally on stage or whatever being seen, but we don't want the attention ultimately on us. We want the attention ultimately on our entire community, and we want that in all different aspects. And I think that's what keeps us grounded as far as where our value system is monetarily.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, if the director wanted to cast you for the next Crazy Rich Asian, which role would you like to be in and why? Now's your chance.
All right, John Chu, are you listening to this podcast? Okay, if you're listening, this is the role I want. All right, I want to be Aquafina's guy friend. It could be whatever relation you want. I want to be hooked up with Aquafina. I want to be the hardworking, crazy, poor American that's working in entertainment, working in the music industry, and then me and Aquafina would totally get along because we don't care about money, but what we care about is the love for hip hop and proper representation within our culture. And then we would have all these really funny, crazy, like funny dynamics between someone that's wealthy, somebody that's not wealthy, but they come together for the same common goal of humor and getting along and trying to like create some sort of positive change.
You are hired. Right. Who's next? Long?
I think if I was to pick to cast on that, I would truly probably want to be in Nick's shoes and be the main character, because there's a lot of things that can be exposed and that can open up the doors to a lot of things to elevate and raise humanity on, not only from an Asian perspective, but also from different other perspectives. And being in that role, to be able to break the stereotypes and be able to know that other people are going through the same things, is going to be a position that I want to be able to elevate humanity.
Baldwin, can I be a sidekick to your sidekick? I think, I mean, I just loved Awkwafina's role. I think for me, that was just liberating. Just because I think my personality, my culture, just being very refined, doing the right thing, saying the right things, and just to, I think, be in that role, just to let that other side of myself out. Like, I think just being outlandish, dressing however I want, saying however I want, like that would just be so much fun to do. Because you know, I do this privately, and I'm trying to do that more publicly. You know, I think that would be really fun. And Long, I like your answer as well. I mean, I think being in that role, in the lead role of Nick's character, and I think what I would like to bring to the role is emotion, and really bringing in a really spectrum of being touched, being moved, crying, anger in different ways. And because you don't see, I want to see more expressions of men and masculinity, not just this kind of you know, hardness, or, you know, because Nick is a little one-dimensional for me. You know, he's you know, good looking, has everything together, but I really want to see, I think, just more struggle in his expression and his emotions, just to give Asian men and men in general, just to see the scope of the different ways that we can really express ourselves.
Very good. I'm hiring you, Kirk, and I'm hiring you, Long, too.
Yeah, you're all hired.
You're all
That's right.
hired. Okay.
So
yeah.
I love what you guys said, Kirk. I love what you just said there. Nick was kind of he was kind of the secondary role to Rachel in the film, and so having a film that really focused on Nick, or where the lead character was a male and was complex, would be great to see. However, I'm going to change my vote, and I just want to be in Baldwin's posse. I just would be, he'd play that character. You kind of broke my mind open with that whole role. I didn't know we were talking about the second film. So I want to be in Baldwin's posse with Kirk, and we'll be like his two sidekicks. We'll be all, like this, and he'll be laying down the rap on the streets.
And this would be like the Run DMC version, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
Right here,
yeah.
All four of us.
Maybe some sunglasses, and, we're like just raising hell on the streets. But that's what I vote for. So I hope when John Chu hears this, we all get jobs, and I'll see you guys on the set.
All right. That is the promise. So in less than 5 words, how would you sum up this movie?
I'll go first. Go see this movie.
Okay.
I would say sum up the movie is we're not all the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would say to sum it up would be breaking barriers.
And I would say you'll have a good time. You'll have a good time. It was a really fun film. It was really well made. It was true to all the subtleties in Asian culture. I mean, they got so many little things right down to the matriarchal grandmother's interactions with the daughter. I mean, to the food, to the they got so many subtleties right, and it was authentic. As Baldwin said, that's so important. It was authentic, but it was just a great film for anyone that didn't catch any of those subtleties. It was just a really fun film. I mean, with the lines like "There's kids starving in America," you know. I mean, it just was fun all around, and it was feel good without being cheesy Hollywood feel good. Like they really put together a great storyline. Well, I guess the book was already written, but the storyline was great. The shooting was great. The cinematography was fantastic. So I just say you'll enjoy it. You'll have a good time, and that's why it's doing so well.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you, Kurt, Dan, Baldwin, and Long for being on the Asians Men's panel and participating in this discussion. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy it too.
I just want to put one shout out first before we go. I want to say that my mother broke ground for Asian film. She was in a John Waters movie in 1979, 1981. She was in Polyester. She had a very small role. So shout out to my mom for breaking ground for Asians in American film. Polyester, John Waters. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Thank you guys too. I hope hopefully I can meet you guys live in person someday.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you all. It was
On the set, right?
to be here with all.
That's right, on the set.
Where do you live, Baldwin? Where do you live?
We're in LA, yeah.
So I'm going to make a point to visit all of you in person. Where are you, Kimchi? You're in San Francisco, right, Kimchi?
San Jose, yes.
San Jose. So I am coming out to San Diego next week long. So hopefully, or actually in a couple days. God, it's already next week. I'm coming out there in a couple days. Kirk and Kimchi, I'm coming up to San Jose in December. I have a mastermind retreat up there, so I want to see both of you. And Baldwin, I come out to LA very often, so I will hit you up and hopefully we can get together, man. That would be awesome.
Yeah, man, thanks.
Yeah, brother.
That's good.
Hey, can I give a side note real quick?
Sure.
Lisa Liu, who played the grandmother in Crazy Rich Asians, was at my wedding.
Wow.
Whoa.
Awesome.
So she's a family friend of my wife's side. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Wow. Then you are higher. So put in the good word for us, okay? I have a panel of women too. They want to be in the show too. I mean, in the movie. All right. So for you, our listeners, what is your takeaway from today's episode? Let us know your thoughts. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, please subscribe, review, rank, and share the link to this podcast at www.asianwomenofpower.com. Share it on your social media and tell a friend. We appreciate your support. Goodbye now.